Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin with a simple but uncomfortable truth. The greatest enemy you will ever face is not outside you. It is not the economy, your boss, your background, or your lack of resources. The greatest enemy is the weaker version of yourself that quietly negotiates comfort over courage, excuses over effort, and fear over growth. Today is about one decision, killing that weak version of yourself so a stronger, truer version can finally lead your life. This is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming who you already know you are capable of being. Before we talk about discipline, habits, strength, or success, we must talk about something far more fundamental, clarity of purpose. Because the weak version of you does not fail due to lack of talent or opportunity. It fails because it does not know why it should endure pain when life becomes difficult. Confusion is comfortable, purpose is demanding, and the weak self always chooses comfort. Let me be very clear, when your life lacks purpose, every obstacle feels personal. Every setback feels unfair. And every challenge feels like a reason to quit. You wake up tired not because your body is weak, but because your direction is unclear. You scroll endlessly, procrastinate endlessly, and delay endlessly because there's nothing inside you strong enough to pull you forward. Purpose is not motivation. Motivation is a spark. Purpose is a fire. Motivation excites you for a moment. Purpose carries you through years of struggle. Think about a parent working 2 jobs to provide for their children. That parent is not energized by motivational quotes. They are driven by something deeper: responsibility, love, meaning. Purpose gives suffering dignity. The weak version of you asks, how can I avoid pain? The strong version asks, what pain is worth enduring? That question changes everything. When you lack purpose, discipline feels like punishment. When you have purpose, discipline feels like devotion. The same early mornings, the same sacrifices, the same hard work. One person calls it torture, the other calls it necessary. The difference is not the task. The difference is the reason. Studies from Stanford and Harvard consistently show that people who feel their lives have meaning are more resilient under stress, recover faster from failure, and perform better over the long term. Why? Because when people understand why they are doing something, their brain tolerates difficulty differently. Pain stops being an enemy and becomes part of the process. Look at history. Every individual who changed their life or the world had one thing in common: a purpose bigger than comfort. Martin Luther King Jr. did not walk into danger because it felt good. Entrepreneurs do not risk bankruptcy because it feels safe. Athletes do not push through injury because it's enjoyable. They move forward because stopping would betray who they believe they are. Now here's the hard truth. Most people avoid purpose is not found. It is chosen. The weak version of you waits for clarity to magically appear. The strong version commits first and gains clarity through action. You don't discover purpose by sitting and thinking endlessly. You discover it by asking yourself difficult questions and accepting uncomfortable answers. What do you care enough about to suffer for? What would still matter if no one applauded you? What problem in the world angers you enough that you are willing to work on it even when it's hard? Purpose does not mean your life will suddenly become easy. In fact, it often means your life becomes harder, but more meaningful. And meaning is what keeps you standing when ease disappears. When people say they feel lost, what they really mean is that they have been living according to other people's expectations. Society told them what success looks like. Social media told them what happiness looks like. Family told them what safety looks like. And somewhere along the way, they forgot to decide for themselves. That is how weakness grows, by outsourcing your direction. Purpose demands honesty. It demands that you admit what matters to you, even if it scares you, even if it makes others uncomfortable, even if it forces you to change. And once you have even a fragile sense of purpose, something powerful happens. You stop negotiating with your weaker self. You stop asking, do I feel like it today? And start asking, is this aligned with who I'm becoming? That question kills weakness quickly. A person with purpose does not need external pressure. They apply internal pressure. They don't need to be chased. They move with intention. They don't drift through life hoping things improve. They build lives that mean something to them. So if you want to kill the weak version of yourself, stop asking for easier circumstances and start demanding clearer reasons. Sit alone and decide what you stand for. Decide what you refuse to quit on. Decide what kind of person you want to be when life tests you, and it will. Because when the storm comes, and it always does, talent won't save you, luck won't save you, comfort won't save you, only purpose will. And the moment your purpose becomes stronger than your fear, the weak version of you begins to disappear. Once purpose is clear, there is nowhere left to hide. And this is where the second truth begins. Nothing in your life truly changes until you take full, uncompromising ownership of it. The weak version of you survives by blaming. Blaming the past, blaming people, blaming systems, blaming timing. It whispers comforting lies like, it's not my fault, or I would have succeeded if things were different. As long as you believe those lies, you give away your power. Ownership is not about self-criticism or shame. Ownership is about control. The moment you say, this is on me, you reclaim the ability to change it. The weak self avoids responsibility because responsibility is heavy. The strong self embraces it because responsibility is freedom. Look at any person who transformed their life in a meaningful way, and you will find this pattern. At some point, they stopped explaining their situation and started owning it. They didn't deny hardship, but they refused to let hardship define their future. Two people can start in the same background, same struggles, same disadvantages. One stays trapped, angry, and bitter. The other grows, adapts, and rises. The difference is not luck, it is ownership. When you blame external forces, you may feel temporarily relieved, but you become permanently stuck. Blame feels good in the moment because it protects your ego. Ownership feels uncomfortable because it exposes your choices. But discomfort is the price of growth. You cannot become stronger while protecting your excuses. Consider someone who is unhealthy. The weak version says, I have bad genetics, I don't have time, or healthy food is expensive. The strong version says, what can I control today? A walk, one better meal, one earlier night of sleep. Ownership does not demand perfection, it demands honesty. And honesty leads to progress. Data from psychology supports this. People with an internal locus of control, the belief that their actions matter, are more resilient, perform better under stress, and recover faster from failure than those who believe life just happens to them. When you believe you are in control, you act differently, you prepare differently, you persist longer. Weakness dissolves when control is reclaimed. The weak version of you waits to be saved. The strong version saves itself. Ownership also means owning your results, not just your intentions. Many people say, I tried. But trying is not the same as doing what works. If your results are not improving, something in your approach must change. Ownership demands adjustment. It demands learning. It demands humility. Think about leaders in high-pressure environments, pilots, surgeons, military commanders. When things go wrong, the strongest leaders don't look for someone to blame. They ask, what did we miss? That mindset prevents future failure. Weak leadership blames. Strong leadership learns. The same applies to your personal life. If your finances are unstable, it doesn't help to only blame the economy. If your relationships are strained, it doesn't help to only blame others. If your career is stagnant, it doesn't help to only blame the system. Those things may be factors, but they are not solutions. Ownership turns problems into projects. This is where many people resist. Because ownership means you must admit that some of your pain was avoidable, that some of your habits held you back, that some opportunities were missed because of fear or comfort. That admission hurts, but that pain is productive. It sharpens you. The weak self avoids that pain by staying defensive. The strong self accepts it and grows. Ownership also builds credibility. People trust those who own their mistakes. Teams follow leaders who take responsibility. Relationships deepen when people stop justifying and start acknowledging. Ownership strengthens not only you, but every connection around you. And here is the most important part. You cannot kill the weak version of yourself while protecting it with excuses. Every excuse is a shelter where weakness hides. Tear down those shelters and weakness has nowhere to live. This does not mean life will suddenly become fair. It means you will become effective. And effectiveness beats fairness every time. So stop asking who failed you. Ask what you can do next. Stop replaying what should have happened. Focus on what must happen now. Stop waiting for ideal conditions. Take responsibility in imperfect ones, because the moment you take ownership of your life, weakness loses its strongest weapon. And when weakness loses its excuses, strength finally takes command. There comes a moment in every life when we must confront a hard realization: motivation is unreliable. It arrives late, leaves early, and disappears the moment discomfort shows up. The weak version of you depends on motivation. It waits to feel ready, inspired, confident, or energized. And while it waits, life quietly passes by. Strength begins the day you stop negotiating with your feelings and start honoring your commitments. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is direction. It is the structure that carries you forward when emotions fluctuate. If motivation is a spark, discipline is the engine. Sparks fade, engines endure. Every meaningful achievement in human history has been built on systems, routines, and repeated actions, not moods. The weak self asks, do I feel like doing this today? The strong self asks, is this what I said I would do? That single shift in thinking separates potential from progress. Consider how simple disciplined behaviors shape your life without drama. You don't debate whether to brush your teeth. You don't wait for inspiration to fasten your seatbelt. These actions are embedded into your identity. Discipline becomes effortless when behavior becomes identity. The strongest people are not forcing themselves every day. They have trained themselves to act automatically in alignment with who they are becoming. This is where many people misunderstand discipline. They think discipline is about intensity, pushing harder, being tougher, suffering more. But real discipline is about consistency. Small actions repeated daily outperform occasional heroic effort every time. Data backs this up. Studies on habit formation show that consistent routines reduce cognitive load, meaning your brain spends less energy deciding and more energy executing. Discipline removes decision fatigue. Weakness feeds on indecision. Look at athletes who train for years for moments that last seconds. On competition day, they don't rise to the level of their motivation. They fall to the level of their training. The same is true in life. When stress hits, when pressure mounts, when fear appears, you don't suddenly become disciplined. You reveal the discipline you've practiced. The weak version of you relies on bursts of effort followed by long periods of rest. The strong version relies on rhythm. And rhythm beats intensity because rhythm is sustainable. Think about someone trying to improve their finances. The weak self waits for a surge of motivation to budget, invest, or learn. The strong self sets automatic systems, saving a percentage, tracking expenses weekly, learning a little every day. One approach depends on feelings. The other depends on structure. Over time, structure always wins. Discipline also creates self-trust. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, your confidence grows. Every time you break one, your confidence erodes. Confidence is not something you think your way into. It is something you build through action. The weak self seeks confidence first. The strong self earns it. And here is a truth many people avoid. Discipline feels hardest at the beginning because your identity is changing. Your old habits resist being replaced. Your weak self fights back. That resistance is not a sign you are failing. It is a sign you are winning. Growth always meets resistance. The strongest individuals do not eliminate discomfort. They normalize it. They understand that feeling tired, bored, or unmotivated is not an emergency. It is part of the process. The weak self treats discomfort as a stop sign. The strong self treats it as a checkpoint. Discipline is also deeply tied to freedom. This may sound paradoxical, but the more disciplined you are, the more freedom you gain. Financial discipline creates choice. Physical discipline creates energy. Time discipline creates space. Emotional discipline creates stability. The weak self avoids discipline to feel free today, only to become trapped tomorrow. The strong self chooses discipline today to live freely tomorrow. Look at the difference between someone who lives reactively and someone who lives intentionally. The reactive person wakes up responding to messages, demands, and crises. The intentional person follows a plan. One feels busy but stuck. The other feels focused and progressing. Discipline is what transforms effort into direction. The weak version of you romanticizes motivation because it removes responsibility. If you don't act, you can blame your feelings. Discipline removes that escape. It asks you to act anyway. And that is why it kills weakness so effectively. You don't need to feel ready. You need to be consistent. You don't need perfect conditions. You need repeatable actions. You don't need massive change. You need daily proof that you can trust yourself. And when you do the work without applause, without excitement, without certainty, something powerful happens. Your identity shifts. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who does. That is when the weak version of you begins to fade, not because you fought it emotionally, but because you outgrew it behaviorally. Discipline does not shout, it whispers. And if you listen to it daily, it will lead you somewhere your motivation never could. If discipline is the structure that builds strength, then discomfort is the test that reveals it. The weak version of you spends its entire life trying to avoid discomfort. It mistakes comfort for safety and ease for success. But comfort has never built anything meaningful. Growth does not happen in places where you already feel confident, secure, and in control. Growth happens where certainty ends. Every time you feel fear, resistance, or doubt, your body is not telling you to stop. It is telling you that you are standing at the edge of change. The weak self interprets discomfort as danger. The strong self understands it as data. Discomfort is feedback. It shows you where you are untrained, unprepared, or unchallenged. And the only way forward is through it. Look at the human body. Muscles do not grow without stress. They must be pushed beyond what is familiar. The tearing, the soreness, the fatigue, those are not signs of damage. They are signs of adaptation. The same principle applies to confidence, skill, and character. Without pressure, there is no expansion, yet most people live their lives trying to stay within what they already know. They stay in jobs they dislike because it feels safer than learning something new. They stay silent in rooms where their voice matters because speaking up feels uncomfortable. They avoid starting because failure feels embarrassing, and slowly, quietly, weakness becomes normal. The strongest people in the world are not fearless. They are familiar with fear. They have trained themselves to move while afraid. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else matters more. Failure plays a crucial role here. The weak version of you sees failure as proof of inadequacy. The strong version sees it as instruction. Every failure contains information. Tells you what didn't work, what needs adjustment, and where to focus next. Research in learning psychology shows that people who treat mistakes as learning signals improve faster than those who avoid mistakes altogether. Avoidance protects the ego. Engagement builds competence. Consider how children learn to walk. They fall constantly. They don't label themselves as failures. They don't stop trying because they fell yesterday. They adjust and try again. Somewhere along the way, adults learn to associate failure with identity. We stop saying that didn't work and start saying I'm not good at this. That shift creates weakness. The weak self avoids situations where it might look incompetent. The strong self seeks situations where it might become competent. Discomfort also strips away illusion. It reveals who you are when conditions are not ideal. Anyone can appear confident when things are easy. Character is revealed under pressure. When you are tired, stressed, or challenge your true habits surface, that is why discomfort is such a powerful teacher. It does not lie. Think about people who have gone through extreme adversity and emerged stronger. They didn't grow because pain is magical. They grew because pain demanded adaptation. They were forced to develop resilience, perspective, and courage. Not everyone who experiences hardship grows, but everyone who grows has experienced hardship. The weak version of you runs from difficulty, believing life should be easier. The strong version accepts difficulty as part of the contract. That acceptance changes everything. When you stop expecting comfort, discomfort loses its power to surprise you. Discomfort also builds emotional strength. When you learn to sit with uncertainty, rejection, or failure without escaping, numbing, or quitting, you expand your tolerance. What once felt unbearable becomes manageable. What once stopped you no longer controls you. Weakness shrinks when tolerance expands. And here is a critical truth. Avoiding discomfort does not eliminate pain. It delays it. The pain of discipline and effort is temporary. The pain of regret is permanent. The weak self chooses short-term relief and long-term dissatisfaction. The strong self chooses short-term discomfort and long-term fulfillment. Every time you avoid a difficult conversation, delay a necessary decision, or retreat from a challenge, weakness gains ground. Every time you lean in, speak up, try again, or stand firm, strength grows. Discomfort is the doorway, failure is the tuition, growth is the reward. So when you feel that familiar urge to retreat, to delay, to stay small, recognize it for what it is, not a warning, but an invitation. An invitation to become more capable, more confident, more resilient. The weak version of you cannot survive prolonged exposure to discomfort. It either adapts or disappears. And when you choose growth repeatedly, weakness has no choice but to leave. Because the life you want exists just beyond the discomfort you keep avoiding. No transformation happens in isolation. You can have purpose, ownership, discipline, and courage, and still remain stuck if the environment around you keeps pulling you backward. The weak version of you survives in spaces where standards are low, excuses are normalized, and mediocrity is protected. Strength, on the other hand, is forged in environments where expectations are clear and accountability is unavoidable. Human beings are not just individuals, we are mirrors. We reflect the behaviors, beliefs, and standards of the people around us. This is not opinion. It is biology and psychology. Neuroscience shows that mirror neurons in the brain cause us to subconsciously imitate the attitudes and behaviors of those we spend the most time with. That means your environment is not neutral. It is shaping you, whether you notice it or not. The weak self seeks comfort in sympathy. It wants people who say, it's not your fault. You did your best and at least you tried, even when improvement is possible. Sympathy feels kind, but when overused, it becomes a cage. It soothes you while you stay the same. The strong self seeks standards. It wants people who say, you missed the mark. You can do better. And let's raise the bar. Standards feel uncomfortable, but they liberate you. Look at any high-performing team, whether in sports business or the military. They are not built on feelings. They are built on expectations. Everyone knows what excellence looks like, and everyone is held to it. Accountability is not personal, it is cultural. That culture is what separates average groups from exceptional ones. Weak environments avoid hard conversations to keep the peace. Strong environments have hard conversations to protect progress. Think about someone trying to improve their health while surrounded by people who mock discipline and celebrate indulgence. Every healthy choice feels like rebellion. Now place that same person among others who value fitness, routine, and consistency. Suddenly, discipline feels normal. The individual did not change, the environment did. Strength grew because weakness lost reinforcement. This is why changing your surroundings can change your life faster than changing your mindset. Mindset matters, but environment multiplies behavior. If you want to kill the weak version of yourself, you must stop feeding it with familiar but limiting influences. Standards begin with boundaries. Boundaries are not punishments, they are protections. They protect your time, energy, and focus. The weak self avoids boundaries because it fears rejection. The strong self sets boundaries because it respects direction. When you say no to distractions, you say yes to progress. There is also a difference between friends who care about your comfort and friends who care about your future. Both may mean well, but only one will challenge you when you fall short. Growth requires friction. Without friction, nothing sharpens. Consider mentorship. The most valuable mentors are rarely the most comforting. They are the most honest. They see your potential and refuse to let you settle beneath it. They correct you not because they enjoy criticism, but because they believe you are capable of more. Weakness avoids these voices. Strength seeks them. Data from organizational psychology consistently shows that teams with clear standards and accountability outperform those focused only on morale. Morale improves when people feel competent and progressing, not when standards are lowered. High standards do not burn people out, unclear expectations do. Your environment also includes what you consume, content, conversations, and narratives. If you constantly absorb messages that normalize victimhood, shortcuts, and excuses, weakness feels justified. If you consume stories of resilience, discipline, and responsibility, strength feels possible. What you watch, listen to, and read shapes your internal dialogue. The weak version of you wants belonging at any cost. The strong version understands that not every room deserves your presence. Sometimes growth requires distance. Sometimes it requires walking away from people who knew the old you but resist the new one. That is painful, but necessary. You cannot grow in a space that benefits from you staying small. Standards also require self-accountability. It is easy to demand excellence from others. It is harder to demand it from yourself. Strong people hold themselves to the same expectations they admire in others. They do not lower the bar when no one is watching. When standards become part of your identity, you stop asking, is this good enough? And start asking, is this aligned with who I choose to be? That shift kills weakness quietly and permanently. So choose your environment intentionally. Choose people who challenge you. Choose spaces where effort is respected. Choose routines that reinforce growth. Choose inputs that elevate your thinking. Because the weak version of you cannot survive in a high standard environment. It will either rise or retreat. And when you surround yourself with standards instead of sympathy, strength has no choice but to take over. That is how the transformation completes, not with noise, but with alignment. Ladies and gentlemen, killing the weak version of yourself does not happen in one dramatic moment. It happens in small, daily decisions when you choose purpose over pleasure, ownership over excuses, discipline over comfort, growth over fear, and standards over sympathy. And here's the most powerful part: the weak version of you already knows it's time to go. That quiet voice inside you, the one that feels uncomfortable during this speech, that voice is not guilt. It is truth. So don't wait for permission. Don't wait for confidence. Act first and confidence will follow, because the world does not need a smaller, safer version of you. It needs the strongest version you can become. Thank you.